USS Independence, the Tier 5 US premium carrier, has now sailed into Legends, and it's going to be one of the choices in the 4th of July campaign 2022. So what does this carrier have to offer that's different from the other Tier 5 carriers, and is she worth picking up over the USS Black? We will answer those questions and more, so let's go check her out. Alright, so let's divide this video up. Ship setup, we'll look at that first, then a stats comparison of the other carriers versus Independence, and then we can see her gameplay and talk about that. But for starters, let's see what this match is looking like. Shards, we spawn in between B and C. The most important thing for me to know as a carrier are that there are 2 enemy destroyers, a Minakaze and a Farragut in the match. So we're going to start by flying up here and trying to spot them for our team, maybe deal a little damage while we're at it. Alright, let me show my commander and ship setup. We are using Flight Control Module in slot 1 and Air Groups in slot 2. As for the commander, we're using the generic American CV commander, Ernest King. Inspirations that I would recommend would be Space Fishy if you have that commander to boost the torpedo speed, but I do not, so we're using Swirski to improve the concealment of the carrier, and Azerland Shokauku for carrier speed. So let's jump right in and see how she compares to the other carriers at Tier 5, of which now we have 7 to choose from. Survivability wise, 39k health. It's not very much. You're going to come in 6th place here. Arguably, it's a meaningless stat, I suppose, because you shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with any other ships, and you probably shouldn't be spotted and all that, but still, it's worth pointing out. You could be kind of squishy and go down pretty easily. The armor isn't really noteworthy. Remember, this is a ship that is built on a Cleveland-class cruiser hull, so not very well armored. The deck, 13 millimeters, means you can get farmed pretty easily by HE, and you're not going to shatter much of it. Now, a stat that is actually important is the health pool of your attack aircraft. In terms of the torpedo bombers, 2550. That is 3rd place overall in health. Not bad. Behind the Furious and the Wesser. You do beat your tech tree counterpart by 100 health here, so that's pretty cool. Dive bombers, though, they are a different story. 2200 health is below average, and it's not really what we're used to with an American carrier. You know, we're used to these awesome tanky aircraft that can survive a lot of punishment. You're not going to have it with the dive bombers on Independence. The Ranger is going to have 400 more health here, so big advantage for the tech tree dive bombers. But it's not all bad. Compared to the Ranger, you're going to have a little more speed with your attack aircraft on the Independence. Independence has the 4th fastest torpedo bombers and the 5th fastest dive bombers, so not very fast, but at 149 knots, they are 9 knots faster than the Ranger. The Ranger has really slow dive bombers. Now, maybe you've noticed by now, while our carrier sends up 6 torpedo bombers at a time in a squadron, and that's pretty standard across the board for Tier 5s, we do send up 8 dive bombers at a time. So you have a squadron of 8. That's kind of cool. Now, mostly I do see this being useful in getting yourself deplaned, because again, they have low health and they get shot down easily. But one great thing is if you pre-drop, you know you're going into an area that's pretty hot, and so you just click RT and drop 2 planes, Ordinance, and send them back to the carriers on an attack run. You could still have 6 planes. So that is kind of useful, whereas if you pre-drop on another carrier, you're only going in with a squad of 4. Also, keeping your 8 planes, if you find a weak, isolated AA target, you could stay over him for quite a while and have plenty of opportunities to do attack runs and all that. Or if you're just hovering over a DD to keep it spotted, you could basically stay there indefinitely with 8 dive bombers. Now, on the subject of being deplaned, Independence has the fastest aircraft restoration time for torpedo bombers at Tier 5. 57 seconds. That's pretty good. And the 2nd fastest for dive bombers behind the Ranger. And that means exactly what it sounds like. Throughout the match, you're going to replace lost aircraft quicker than most other CVs at Tier 5. Now on to the Ordinance. The torpedoes don't hit very hard, 2200 damage apiece. They do have decent speed though, 49 knots, nearly ties for the fastest torpedoes from planes for carriers at tier 5. The fastest is 50 knots, so only 1 knot more, and that is shared by the Wesser and the 2 IJN carriers. So 49 knots, pretty good. You compare that to the Furious and the Ranger, their torps only go about 35 knots, and they're really hard to aim. So that's a pretty good advantage here for the Independence. On to the dive bombers. The dive bombers wreck face. 15,500 damage for a full pin. That's the best in class, and if I recall, it's a 43% fire chance on my build. The last notable thing about the aircraft that you guys would care about, and that will affect your gameplay, is how stealthy these planes are in the air. They are a little better than the norm. The standard's about 10 kilometers for most of the nations. With Independence, you get 8.5 kilometer detection for both types of planes. This helps you to sneak up on enemy ships, especially destroyers, a little better. It gives them less time to react and position their ship to avoid your attacks. It's pretty handy. I noticed a difference with Kaga. I think her aircraft detection was pretty darn low, 7.5. It's been a long time since I've played her, but that made a pretty big difference in setting up attack rounds, and it helps. And with Independence, I think it will help a little bit as well. Okay, so the anti-aircraft stats vary wildly for the tier 5 carriers. I've never really paid attention to it till now. Ranger is actually the best. 306 damage per second. That's some pretty saucy AA for tier 5. Independence is in 3rd place at 184. She's going to do 31.5 knots in the water, which is pretty average, and the concealment is bad, almost the worst, at 13.1, and that can be an issue, so I definitely would recommend using Swirski to buff your concealments a little bit, try to keep you safer in the match. The last statistic I wanted to point out was that you have a larger hangar with the Independence, and you're going to get 16 dive bombers rather than just 12. So that is a good little buff as well. Now, looking back at the gameplay, we moved over to a match on straight as it was a little more lively than the one on shards, but now let's go back to shards and see how the match is wrapping up over there. It's no secret that I'm not a huge carrier fan, and what I mean by that is I don't usually enjoy playing them all that much. I'm glad they're here. I'm glad they're in the game. I think it only makes sense in, this is a World War II era style arcade ship shooter. I think carriers should be in the game. I think they have important roles to play, such as spotting enemy ships, cycling damage cons, forcing enemy players to react, hunting destroyers, and so on. But I'm not a fan in the sense that I don't really enjoy playing them unless I have a good division to capitalize on me doing all of the above things. It's frustrating to keep DDs permaspotted just to have your team not care to shoot them and so on. So again, I'm glad we have CVs in the game, but I'm also happy I don't have to play them very often. And on that note, I definitely wouldn't proclaim to be a good carrier player. I can get by. I definitely didn't get a 66% win rate playing CVs. But anyways, keep all that in mind and take this video with a grain of salt. Now, on that note, I have not spent a lot of time playing carriers since grinding the Serov and the Pobeda, of which I would say Serov is still the most fun carrier at tier 5. The skip bombers are easier to target destroyers, which is the most rewarding thing you can do when playing a carrier, is just absolutely nuke destroyers. The Independence dive bombers, they have a lot of RNG built into their bombing runs, so the bombs are pretty random on whether or not you would ever hit a DD. So instead, I would use those dive bombers for big targets such as battleships and cruisers, where you can deal a lot of damage and set fires, and then go after the destroyers with your 49 knot torpedoes, which again, that's pretty good speed for tier 5, and they can deal a decent amount of damage when they get hits. Okay, on to my opinion. I think the Independence has some cool features over her tech sister. A little bit faster planes is cool, the extra concealment is awesome, the aircraft regeneration time, especially on the torpedo bombers, is pretty saucy, 57 seconds. The larger hangar size for the dive bombers and their better speed over Ranger is cool. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some good features to this carrier, and she's unique. Be careful, she does not have any secondaries, so getting close to any other ship would be a very, very bad idea. But anyways, a cool campaign ship. I would probably have rather seen her implemented kind of like the Zueho, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the IJN Tier 5 Premium CV. She was just put straight into the store where you could buy her. I think that's maybe how Independence should have been implemented as well, instead of making people choose between the USS Black, a Tier 7 Premium Destroyer, and then this. But that is just my thoughts. I think the Zueho, when she was put in the store, was 10,000 doubloons. So I suppose it's the same price, I mean, I guess. But anyways, just my 2 cents. I would have rather seen her go into the store. But cool ship. I definitely would not choose the Independence over the USS Black. I think the Black offers a little more competitive gameplay and some unique features with that 13-second radar consumable for a destroyer. Anyways, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, so be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, be sure to like the video. That helps the channel out greatly. And also be sure to subscribe for future content so that you never miss another video. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.